All right, moving on to a story that I think people are going to love, particularly this time of the year, as you enjoy the last weeks of summer. It's almost over, folks. Barbecues, cookouts, family gatherings, getting friends together. And for part of the country, at least, all that includes the seasoning called Old Bay. If you're in the Mid-Atlantic, you know what I'm talking about. Old Bay has been a pantry staple in that part of America for 8 decades, more than 8 decades, in fact. But in recent years, the spice blend has also inspired a broader cult following and found its way into everything from potato chips, which I endorse, to vodka, which I'm still learning about. Major Garrett met the family behind the beloved seasoning, and they found out there's a backstory featuring an immigrant with a spice grinder.
What's inside a can of Old Bay?
Turns out there's a lot inside that red, yellow, and blue tin. More than just a spicy, salty, smoky seasoning blend. That's in part because of Ralph Brunn, age 97.
Well, my father started a spice company in Baltimore in 1939.
Gustav Brunn, Ralph's dad, fled Nazi Germany for Baltimore in the late 30s.
He had spent actually 16 days prior to coming here in a concentration camp.
It sounds like a narrow escape.
We got out. It was a touch-and-go situation.
Ralph was 14 when he and his family arrived with little money and fewer prospects.
My father looked for a job and couldn't find one, and ultimately somebody told him, well, you got the equipment here, go get in business.
Right.
And he did. He bought this mill in 1935.
The equipment was an industrial spice grinder brought over from Germany, so central to the Old Bay story, it is on display at the Baltimore Museum of Industry.
This machine doesn't make it to America. There is no Old Bay.
This is true. This is what started Old Bay seasoning.
At the time, Gustav made and sold spices mostly to meat packers for things like sausages, hot dogs, and bologna.
His place of operation was directly across the street from the wholesale fish market, which existed there at the time in downtown Baltimore.
And that's how Old Bay found its way into the seafood you eat today. Fishmongers would buy Gustav's spice mix to steam crabs.
Primarily, they used red pepper, used black pepper, mustard, celery seeds, that sort of thing.
Ralph eventually took over the company before selling it to a British firm. Spice giant McCormick owns Old Bay now.
This is what you do.
Not surprisingly, around a crab, Ralph Brunn is a maestro.
No, you don't do that.
Your correspondent, not so much.
Email, you'd be tolerated in Maryland. Keep that up.
For some, Old Bay is nostalgic, woven into mid-Atlantic Augusts of yesteryear.
It takes me back to the warm weather. It takes me back to the beginning of summer.
And if you haven't noticed, Old Bay is seemingly everywhere these days. Printed on shoes, aprons, bandanas, shirts, infused into Goldfish, hot sauce beer, and yes, vodka.
Cheers, Old Bay!
Greg David is CEO of George's Beverage Company, which took 3 years to develop Old Bay vodka, now sold in the Mid-Atlantic. The first batch produced 600 cases.
It sold out in 24 minutes. We've done almost 10,000 cases since the middle of March.
The same is true of Old Bay Goldfish, also sold out in record time.
Did you ever imagine a situation where this creation of your father's and your family's would become this sort of runaway brand that it's become?
No, I had no idea it would do that. And of course, I wish my father were alive today in order to see this because he was proud of this was his baby.
His father would also want to pay a visit to the Charmery in Baltimore, where Old Bay caramel ice cream is a menu staple.
That's amazingly good.
And I'm not alone.
You can feel the peppery tingling.
I expected it to, taste like the Old Bay seasoning, but it didn't have that. It was very smooth, actually.
Amid the Old Bay mania, Ralph Brunn is a voice of reason, a reality check on seasonal spice swooning.
Can you love this too much?
I think when they get carried away with having all these Old Bay, this, that, and the other that you're talking about, I think it's a little ridiculous, but that's what they do. It's a seasoning. That's all it is.
Ralph Brunn isn't salty. He's just seasoned. For CBS Mornings, Major Garrett, Baltimore.
It's a seasoning, but it seems to go on everything. I can't get over Ralph Brunn, who's 97. Looks really good. So does Major, by the way, in those jeans.
You see Major doing his thing?
I saw Major Garrett.
Using the mallet, though, on that Chesapeake Bay crab.
You like to cook a lot.
I spent my high school years in Maryland. I had a lot of experience with Old Bay.
So you do know Old Bay.
I would actually catch my old crabs. You put chicken neck on a piece of yarn, drop it into the bay. The crabs come up and grab it. If they're the right size, you can take them up boil them up, Old Bay. Then the great part is at the end, if you put paper down on the table, you can just wrap the paper up and cleanup is done in one go.
Okay.
That's it.
You're a regular old Tom Sawyer over here, man.
or Martha Stewart.
Exactly.
Or Martha Stewart. I'm trying to figure out which one.
Yeah.